Hello all, a very good day to all of you. We meet again, all the PU2 students. So this is DMG. Today we'll be discussing the second PUC complete revision of your Springs textbook, the quick revision or the quick summary of the first 6 chapters of your Springs textbook, that is literature. So previously we had done both the model question papers. So today we'll be doing chapter 1 to 6. Okay, in the upcoming classes, we'll be completing chapter 7 to 14, okay, and important questions as well. So this is the most crucial part of the academic year wherein all of you will be preparing. Okay, so don't worry, we will be here, we'll be giving you regular updates, and we will be helping you with what you require to prepare for the board exams as well. So we'll move on. So today we'll be discussing the first 6 chapters of your Springs textbook, okay? Moving on. Yeah, so the first chapter, Romeo and Juliet by William Shakespeare. So initially what happens, Romeo attends a ball that is thrown by the Capulet family, and Romeo sees Juliet and is mesmerized by her. But before he liked Juliet, he liked another person, okay, and that person was Rosalind, right? So this chapter starts after, or this particular part of the chapter is when Romeo sees Juliet and he is completely mesmerized by her, right? Okay, so Romeo is completely transfixed by Juliet's beauty, describing her as a light so radiant she actually teaches torches how to shine. To him, she stands out against the darkness of the room like a sparkling diamond against dark skin, or a pure white dove moving among a flock of common crows. We see the particular usage used in the lines as well. He immediately questions his past feelings, specifically his recent love for Rosalind. So as we discussed earlier, before his eyes fell on Juliet, he initially was infatuated with another woman, and her name was Rosalind, right? So we see this transition of feelings from Rosalind to Juliet, okay, and he's mesmerized by Juliet. So whatever feelings he had for Rosalind, it moves to Juliet, okay. His recent love for Rosalind, dismissing them as fake because he believes he has never seen true beauty until this very second. He resolves to find where she stands once the dance is over, so he can touch her hand and be blessed by the contact. So this is what Romeo says. He's absolutely mesmerized by her beauty. He says that she's so bright, so fair that she teaches the torches to burn bright at night. Okay, and he also compares Juliet to other women by saying that she looks like a snowy dove or a white dove among a troop of crows. Okay, kind of racist, we can say, Romeo. Okay, and he also says that she looks like a jewel in an Ethiop's ear. So a jewel in an Ethiop's ear is basically the sparkling diamond against the dark skin. So, yeah. So these are the inherent themes in the first chapter. So light versus dark. Romeo uses high contrasting imagery like torches, night, snowy dove, black crows, okay, to show how Juliet pops out of her surroundings. Hyperbole. Hyperbole is again exaggeration. He claims she is too rich for use, suggesting her beauty is so divine it shouldn't even belong on earth. Okay. And fickleness. It's a classic love at first sight moment, but it also highlights Romeo's tendency to jump from one obsession to the next in a heartbeat. So we see that also. Initially, Romeo used to like someone called Rosalind. Okay. But as soon as he sees Juliet, all his feelings for Rosalind goes away. So it's fickle, right? His love or his feelings, you can say, is fickle in a way. Moving on. The core themes, okay. So simile, we see simile being used in the in these following lines. Romeo uses several comparisons using like or as to explain Juliet's rarity. Like a rich jewel in an Ethiop's ear is a simile. Okay, like a rich jewel in an Ethiop's ear is a simile because he's comparing, right? He's comparing Juliet's beauty to a rich jewel in an Ethiop's ear. So like is used. So what did we learn? If simile uses like or as for comparison. He compares her brightness to a sparkling earring against a dark complexion. as yonder lady over her fellows shows. He compares her presence among other women to a superior being among commoners. Okay, metaphor. Unlike the similes, these are direct identifications that elevate her status. So if as and like are not used, and if it's a direct comparison without, if there is no, if you don't use like or as, and there's a direct reference, it becomes a metaphor. So a snowy dove trooping with crows is a metaphor, okay, because like and as, the comparison is not used. Juliet is the dove, a symbol of peace, purity, and beauty, while everyone else is a crow, common, loud, and dark. So he's using these expressions to show how fair and how beautiful Juliet is as compared to the yonder women or other women. Juliet's soliloquy. So what is a soliloquy? Speaking one's thoughts aloud to themselves. When you speak aloud, okay, to yourself loudly, okay, when you think loudly, that is soliloquy basically. So this famous soliloquy. So we finished. We finished whatever Juliet thought of Romeo. Romeo thought of Juliet. Now the second stanza, that is Juliet's soliloquy. So this famous soliloquy from Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet captures Juliet's intense, impatient longing for her wedding night. So a plea for the night. So Juliet personifies the night, begging it to arrive quickly. So what does she say? Come, gentle night. So she's personifying something that has no human qualities, right? So night, giving human qualities to non-human objects or things. So to her, the night isn't dark and scary. It's a gentle and loving protector that hides her private life from the world. Romeo as light. She uses a striking contrast, an oxymoron, by calling Romeo day in night. She describes him as whiter than new snow on a raven's back, suggesting that his presence provides its own brilliant light even in the pitch black. Immortalizing her love. In a beautifully macabre bit of foreshadowing, she asks the night to take Romeo when he eventually dies and cut him out in little stars. So this is how Juliet wants to immortalize Romeo. Okay, after he dies, she wants the night to cut him out in little stars. So the garish sun, she argues that Romeo's beauty as a constellation would make the night sky so magnificent that people would stop worshipping the bright garish sun and fall in love with the darkness instead. In short, Juliet is so deeply in love that she wants to skip the day entirely. She views Romeo as a light so bright that he could outshine the sun and turn the entire world into lovers of the night. Okay, here also simile is used. So whiter than new snow on a raven's back, again comparison. So she tries to say that Romeo is whiter than a new snow on a raven's back. This highlights the stark contrast between Romeo and the night. Metaphor is also used. Take him and cut him out in little stars. She isn't being literal. She is comparing his beauty to the eternal brilliance of constellation. So with that, we finish the first chapter. Yeah, the slides will also be available to you in the group. Okay, you can access the slides. So if it's a quick preparation, you can just access this slide rather than reading through all the chapters in your textbook in detail. Okay, chapter 2, Two Deer. Again, a very interesting lesson. Two Deer by Leo Tolstoy. Yeah. The story is set in Monaco, a tiny kingdom on the shores of the Mediterranean. It is so small that it has only about 7,000 inhabitants. It's a very small kingdom. Okay, as we read, only 7,000 inhabitants, and its army is even more small. Surprisingly, only 60 people in the army, right? 60 men, an army of 60 men. So it's a very small kingdom. As a result, the king or the ruler of the kingdom is not called the king. The writer sarcastically calls him the kinglet. Okay, in the same way how we call the young one of a pig as a piglet. Okay, the writer sarcastically addresses the king as a kinglet because he rules over a very small namesake kingdom of Monaco. So the revenue. The kinglet of Monaco survives on taxes. Okay, what are the taxes? What does he tax? So he taxes tobacco, wine, and spirits. But his main source of income is a gaming house where roulette is played. Okay, he knows gambling is dirty, but he needs the money to keep up his royal lifestyle. We also learn that gambling was once upon a time very addictive in the rest of Europe. But countries like Germany, they ban gambling altogether. Why? Because their citizens get addicted to this game and they commit suicide, they end their life. Okay, so it kind of affected the society, which is why gambling was banned. But since the King of Monaco had no other source of income, he was forced to run this gaming house, and there was nobody to stop him also. So what is roulette? In the previous slide we saw. This is the game of roulette. Okay, so our king had a similar gaming house. So people used to come, even from other countries, they used to come to Monaco, they used to bet their money. So this used to spin. Okay, and most of the time the house would win. So if the house won, a small percentage of that amount would go to the king. So this was the revenue. Okay, this was how the Kingdom of Monaco used to run. He knows gambling is dirty, but he needs the money to keep up with his royal lifestyle. So a particular incident happens. What was the incident? A murder. So a murder occurs. This is a shock because the people of Monaco are usually peaceable. Peaceable as in they live a peaceful life. The murderer is caught, and following the laws of big countries, he is sentenced to death. Okay. So they follow the example of the other big countries. So if you are caught for murder, you'll also be convicted for death penalty or capital punishment. So phase 2. What happens after he was convicted of death penalty? Phase 2, the logistics of death. This is where the satire begins. The king and his ministers realize they have a fancy law, but no fancy tools. The guillotine. Okay, the guillotine search. Monaco has no executioner and no guillotine. They write to the French government. France offers to lend them a machine and an expert for 16,000 francs. So Monaco, being a small kingdom, they never till now had to use the guillotine. What is a guillotine? It's a machine used to kill people. So they did not have this equipment, they did not need it till now. Okay, but now all of a sudden, since they have this criminal here, they need to punish him and they need the guillotine. So they write to the French government. And what does the French government say? We are ready to give it to you, but we will charge 16,000 francs. Okay, 16,000 francs a piece. Now it's very difficult for a small kingdom like Monaco to buy a guillotine for such a high amount. Why? Because as we discussed earlier, there are only 7,000 people in Monaco and each person should be charged 2 francs each, which is a huge amount. Yeah, the budget crisis. The king calculates that 16,000 francs would mean an extra tax of 2 francs per person. He decided the murderer is not worth the money. Okay, what does he do? The French government, their offer is very expensive. So Monaco cannot afford it. Next, they write a letter to their other neighbor, Italy. Okay, the Kingdom of Italy. So the Italian alternative. They ask the King of Italy. Italy, a brother monarch. Okay, the King of Monaco or the Kinglet of Monaco addresses the King of Italy as a brother monarch. Why? Because Italy is also a monarchy like Monaco. However, France is a democracy. So Italy, a brother monarch, offers a discounted price of 12,000 francs. Still the kinglet refuses. He doesn't want to start a riot over taxes just to kill one man. Okay, phase 3. So now they realize that buying a guillotine is very expensive affair. So they think of a cheaper alternative. Okay, so it's phase 3, the cheap alternative. Life imprisonment. Since they can't kill him, they decide to lock him up for life. This way, they look merciful while saving money. Okay, so this was the alternative. They, they reduced the sentence from capital punishment to life imprisonment. So after this was done, another problem arose. What was that problem? The new problem. Monaco has no strong prison suitable for a long-term stay. They find a small lockup and hire a guard to watch the prisoner and fetch his food from the palace kitchen. Of all the places, the food was coming from the palace kitchen. So basically the same food that the king was eating, the prisoner was also eating. What a lifestyle. So the yearly audit. So after a year, after the end of the year, the king looks at the accounts. So between the guard's wages and the food, the prisoner is costing 600 francs a year. Okay, extra 600 francs. So the king realizes the man is young and might live another 50 years. So why does he feel sad that the man is young and would live for another 50 years? Because every year, another additional 600 francs, okay, would mean in another 50 years, it would cost roughly 30,000 francs, which is a lot more money. Okay. Yeah. Phase 4. The attempted escape. The ministers decide to fire the guard to save money, hoping the prisoner will simply run away. The reality check. At dinner time, the prisoner sees there is no guard. Instead of running, he walks to the palace kitchen himself, takes his food and goes back to his cell, locking himself in. So the confrontation. So they see this, okay, and they're surprised. The prisoner does not want to run away. So there is no guard, there is nobody stopping him. But the prisoner, he does not run away. What does he do? He goes to the palace kitchen himself, gets the food, comes back. Now they are surprised and they're also angry. Okay, the confrontation. When asked why he won't leave, the prisoner gives a logical, devastating argument. They ruined his character with a death sentence, so no one will hire him. No one will hire him as in no one will give him a job. Now, should the prisoner go outside, okay, the people of Monaco will recognize him. Oh, this is that guy who committed murder. So his character is tarnished. They will not give him a job. And moreover, he's living a very comfortable life in prison. Okay, he's getting food from the palace kitchen. He has food and accommodation provided. Why will he run away, right? So he has got out of the way of working. The state treated him badly by not executing him when they said they would. So now the state owes him a living. This is what the prisoner is saying. So what is the prisoner basically trying to do? Gen Z people, you guys use a term, gaslighting, right? So the prisoner here is gaslighting the king and the council, okay, into thinking that they are wrong. Phase 5, the final settlement. The only way to get rid of the man is to pay him to leave. The pension. So finally they decide they'll give him a pension. So the council agrees to pay him an annual pension of 600 francs. Okay, the resolution. The prisoner receives an advance. Okay, how much is the advance? 1/3 of the pension amount was given to him as advance. Okay, only then he decided to leave the kingdom. Receives an advance, leaves the kingdom. He buys a bit of land just across the border and starts a small market garden. He returns to Monaco every month to collect his pension, gambles a few francs at the table, and lives comfortably and peaceably. So this is how the story ends. Okay, the prisoner gets a pension. Normally, who gets a pension? Government employees. People with meritorious service get a pension. Here, the prisoner is a murderer, and he walks away with a pension. Okay, and he lives a comfortable life. And once in a while, he'll come to the same gaming house and he'll gamble a franc or two. Okay, he knows he can't waste all his money, so he'll just gamble a franc or two and he'll come back. Okay, so that is how the story ends. So the final lesson. The story concludes with the biting observation that it's a good thing the crime didn't happen in a country where they don't care about expenses. Okay, because in Monaco, the murderer actually ended up with a better life than the honest taxpayer. Okay, see, it's pretty ironic, it's pretty sad. Okay, but that is exactly what happened. The murderer here walked away with a pension. The honest taxpayer, he or she has to continue working. So sarcastically, Leo Tolstoy is trying to say that it's a good thing the crime didn't happen in a country where they don't care about the expenses. Key takeaway. Tolstoy is arguing that state institutions like the army and the law are often just expensive, absurd performances. And the performance gets too expensive, the government is forced to show its true face. A business that cares more about money than justice. So this is what Tolstoy is trying to tell through the lesson Too Dear. So we finished the second chapter. Moving on. Yeah, so here we see the image of the prisoner arguing with the king and the council members. Right, so the prisoner was released from prison and the king asked him, right? The kinglet asked him. So this is a particular scene where the prisoner is arguing with the king and the council. Okay. Chapter 3, On Children. On Children by Khalil Gibran. Okay, a very meaningful, a very thoughtful, a very beautiful poem. Chapter 3, On Children. So this poem is an advice to parents on how to raise children, right? It's an advice to parents, okay? So the concept of ownership. Gibran begins with a startling truth. Your children are not your children. So that's the most important line in the poem. Your children are not your children. Okay, he explains that while children come through you, they do not belong to you. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. That is the exact lines in the poem. So what does it mean? The lesson, parents should provide love, but they must not impose their own thoughts or identities onto their children. Okay, Second, focus on the future. Gibran emphasizes that children live in the house of tomorrow, a place parents cannot visit, even in their dreams. House of tomorrow means children will live on to see the future that parents will not see. Okay, the same way how your grandparents will not see the future that your parents will see, your parents will not see the future that you will see. So, Gibran emphasizes that children live in the house of tomorrow, a place parents cannot visit, even in their dreams. The lesson, parents should not try to make their children like them. Life moves forward, not backward. Trying to mold a child into a mini version of a parent is a disservice to the child's unique destiny. So this is something that resonates well with parents of today. Parents should not try to make the child the mini version of themselves. Okay, the child should be given the absolute freedom to grow and adapt to the present situation. The metaphors of the archer, a very important part of the poem, is the metaphor that the poet uses. So one of the most famous metaphors in literature appears at the end of the poem. The bow. The parents, the bow refers to the parents. Stable, supporting and providing the initial force. The bow is the parent. The bow cannot control the arrow. Okay, it is the archer that controls the arrow. The bow should be stable. The arrow refers to the children. The children, dynamic, living and headed towards a target in their distance. Okay. The archer here refers to God or life, the force that aims the arrow. Let your bending in the archer's hand be for gladness, for even as he loves the arrow that flies, so he loves also the bow that is stable. Okay, the bow should be stable, the arrow flies. Meaning, it is destiny that shapes the future of the child, not the parent. A very beautiful poem. Moving on. Chapter 4, Everything I Need to Know I Learned in the Forest by Vandana Shiva. Okay. Vandana Shiva is an internationally renowned activist for biodiversity and against corporate globalization. In the essay, Everything I Need to Know I Learned in the Forest, she explains about her early lessons of environmentalism. She also tells us how she learned the ideals of a good life from the forest, such as diversity, freedom, and coexistence. Vandana Shiva's ecological journey started in the forests of the Himalayas, a very important point, okay? Where did her ecological journey start? In Himalayas, okay? Chipko movement was one of the first movements that she got inspiration from, okay? She was even a part of Chipko movement. So, her involvement in the contemporary ecological movement began with Chipko. What is Chipko movement? It was a non-violent response to the large-scale deforestation in the Himalaya region. In the 1970s, peasant women in the Garhwal Himalaya had come out in defense of the forests. Vandana Shiva noticed a gradual loss of forests in the region. She then decided to become a volunteer for the movement. So that is how her activism or her environmentalism started. Started off with a Chipko movement, very important. Biodiversity, okay. So, the idea of Navdanya farm or Navdanya movement, where did she get that from? So, Vandana Shiva started the Navdanya farm. Okay. So, Navdanya movement. So, Chipko movement taught Vandana Shiva biodiversity. She realized the importance of biodiversity-based living economies. Hence, she started Navdanya, a movement for biodiversity conservation and organic farming in 1987. Vandana Shiva has worked with farmers to set up more than 100 community seed banks across India. They have saved more than 3,000 rice varieties. So they have something called seed banks. You would have read in the lesson as well. They keep something called seed banks, where seeds are preserved for future use. Right? Yeah. They have saved more than 3,000 rice varieties. This is a transition from monoculture to biodiverse ecological system. To demonstrate her experimentation, she started Navdanya farm in 1994 in the Doon Valley. Is very important. Where did she start Navdanya farm? In Doon Valley, in the lower elevation of Himalayan region of Uttarakhand province. They are now able to conserve and grow 630 varieties of rice, 150 varieties of wheat, and hundreds of other species. Thus, they practice and promote a biodiversity-intensive form of farming that produces more food and nutrition per acre. Okay. Rights of nature, separatism, eco-apartheid. Vandana Shiva interestingly talks about how the UN General Assembly organized a conference on harmony with nature as part of the Earth Day celebrations, inspired by the Constitution of Ecuador and the Universal Declaration of the Rights of Mother Earth initiated by Bolivia. Again, very important, okay? Which country adopted the biodiversity, or which country adopted which country adopted biodiversity into their constitution? It was Ecuador. This emphasizes the importance attached to Mother Earth, contrary to human domination over nature. She upholds the view that human beings are an inseparable part of nature. So she feels that today we do not need an apartheid situation which once divided people based on color. So in history you would have learned there was apartheid, right? People were separated based on color. Similarly, there is something called eco-apartheid in nature, is what Vandana Shiva is saying. Our challenge now is to overcome eco-apartheid based on a separateness of human from nature. So she's trying to say that human beings are also part of nature. So let's not destroy it. The dead earth or industrial revolution, dead earth theory. This separateness paved the way to industrial revolution that replaced vibrant earth by turning it into dead matter. Okay, this has further led to capitalism and consumerism, which exploit natural resources indiscriminately. Okay, if you see industrialism, okay, they thrive by killing the environment. They thrive on dead matter. Okay, cutting of trees is what fuels industrialization. Okay, destroying natural resources, exploiting the earth is how industrialization grows. Okay, so nowhere do you see industrialization coexisting with or helping with the growth and the maintenance of nature. So Vandana Shiva is trying to say that industrialization is basically killing or banking on the dead earth and not the living matter. So this has further led to capitalism and consumerism. Yeah. Thus, terra madre, Mother Earth. So terra madre is Latin. Okay. Terra madre, Mother Earth, was replaced by terra nullius, the empty land, the dead earth. Okay. Moving on. Yeah, the Earth University. Vandana Shiva also started the initiative, the Earth University. Again, very important. The Earth University teaches Earth democracy. So the Earth University, located at Navdanya Biodiversity Farm, is an inspiration from Rabindranath Tagore, which teaches Earth democracy. Rabindranath Tagore had written one of his books, right? Tapovan, essay. Yeah, so that essay also talks about this biodiversity. So she got a lot of inspiration from that essay to recognize, protect, and respect the rights of other species. It is a shift from anthropocentrism, human-centered, to ecocentrism, nature-centered. Okay, from a small age we are taught that human beings are in the center of the chain, okay, which is not true. Okay, human beings are not on top of the ladder. We are just one small part of this ladder. So that is how Vandana Shiva is also, that is what Vandana Shiva is also telling us. Ecocentrism, nature should be in the center, not humans. Okay. Yeah, with that we conclude chapter 4. Chapter 5, A Sunny Morning. A Sunny Morning was discussed previously, also a short summary video. We are doing this again. Chapter 5, A Sunny Morning, the only play in the entire textbook. The plot summary. So the story takes place on a beautiful morning in a quiet corner of a park. Okay, we have two characters, Donna Laura and Don Gonzalo. So the meeting. So what happens? Donna Laura, a sharp-witted elderly woman, is feeding breadcrumbs to pigeons. So she's sitting on a bench, as you see here. Okay, and she's feeding pigeons. You can see pigeons here. So she's feeding breadcrumbs to pigeons. Her piece is interrupted by Don Gonzalo, an old grumpy gentleman who arrives and scares the birds away. They initially bicker and trade insults. So they first start by pulling each other's leg, okay, and chiding or insulting each other. The discovery. As they share a pinch of snuff, tobacco. Snuff is a kind of powder, okay. So you inhale that powder. So as they exchange a pinch of snuff to settle their nerves, they begin to talk about their pasts. So they slowly realize that they were once young lovers in Valencia. Valencia is a place in Spain. Okay. The Silver Maiden and the dashing gallant horseman. Yeah, gallant horseman. The deception. Instead of admitting their true identities, both characters lie. They are too proud to show how much they have aged or changed. Gonzalo claims he is a cousin of the real Gonzalo and tells a tale about how he died a hero's death in the war. Laura claims she was a close friend of the real Laura and describes how she died tragically on the beach with her lover's name on her lips. Okay, so coincidentally, the old man that is Don Gonzalo, is Donna Laura's long lost lover. Okay, and as they talk, they realize that the other person, okay, sitting in the bench with them is their long lost lover. But they try their best to not disclose their identity. What does Don Gonzalo say? This gallant horseman, okay, he was my cousin and he went to Africa and he fought for the Spanish army and he died holding the flag of Spain in his hand. He died speaking or died whispering the name of his lover. Donna Laura also lies. What does she say? This silver maiden, okay, silver maiden is my friend, and she used to wait for letters. She used to wait for information for a very long time. She used to sit beside a rock near the shore until one fine day the heavy tides washed her away. So both are lying to each other. Why are they lying? We'll find out. Laura claims she was a close friend of the real Laura and describes how she died tragically on the beach with her lover's name on her lips. Moving on. The conclusion. Both know the other is lying and both realize who the other truly is. However, they choose to preserve the beautiful memories of their youth rather than face the reality of their old age. They agree to meet again the next morning. The humor comes from the dramatic irony. We see here that something called dramatic irony is used. What is a dramatic irony? Now, when you're seeing a movie or when you're reading a book, okay, so now you know the twist, okay, you realize the twist or you realize what the suspense is, okay, you know who the villain of the story is, but the rest of the characters in the book or in the movie do not know who the villain is or who the hero is. So that is dramatic irony. When the reader or when the viewer realizes something that the other character in the movie or the play does not, that is dramatic irony. So here also we see dramatic irony. Why? Because we know that at a certain point, Don Gonzalo and Donna Laura are long lost lovers. But they themselves do not know that they are talking to the other person. So that is dramatic irony. So the audience, we the audience know they have recognized each other, but we watch them spin elaborate lies to stay young in each other's eyes. So dramatic irony is used here. Yeah, chapter 6, the last chapter, when you are old. Okay, when you are old. So the setting of the future, so time frame is very beautifully used here. So Yeats begins by asking the reader, and he's addressing the beloved, his long lost he's addressing his lover, okay. He's writing this poem, he's dedicating it to his lover, hoping that she will read it. So Yeats begins by asking the reader, the beloved, to project herself into the future. He paints a quiet, somber scene. She is old and grey and full of sleep. So what is he asking her? He's asking her to think of the future, okay, the future where she's old, okay, she's old and weak and very sleepy, very tired, nodding by the fire. He wants her to pick up this very book of poems and remember her youth. Physical beauty versus spiritual love. The second stanza highlights the difference between his love and the love of others. So the others, many loved her for her moments of glad grace and her outward beauty. Okay, their love may have been sincere, but it was superficial. Why was it superficial? Because it relied on the outer appearance of this beloved. The poet, he alone loved her pilgrim soul and the sorrows of her changing face. He loved the essence of who she was, even the parts that were sad or would eventually age. Okay, so what he's trying to say is, he loved her for who she was, her character. Okay, the others loved her for her outward appearance. Third, the bitter regret. The poem ends on a melancholy note. He imagines her leaning over the glowing bars of the fire, murmuring a little sadly about how love was fled. Okay, the metaphor. So here also metaphor is used. Love is personified as a figure that paced upon the mountains overhead and hid his face amid a crowd of stars. So the lesson, love is no longer accessible to her. So in the future, as she is old and tired and sitting by the fireside, she realizes that she cannot access love now. Okay, so she's sitting and regretting. It has become something distant, cold, and celestial because she failed to cherish it when it was right in front of her. Okay, so the poet is warning her. Okay, today you do not recognize my love, tomorrow you will regret. Yeah, with that we conclude the quick summary of the first 6 chapters. Stay tuned for the stay tuned for more. Okay, we complete the other 8 chapters, chapter 7 to 14 also, and we'll be covering the most important questions as well. The crucial time period between 28th February to 3rd March, we'll be having very important videos that will help you, okay, ace in the board exams. Okay, so stay tuned. This is DMG signing off. Thank you and all the best for your board exams.